Alright, hello everyone. I'm Kieran from Tales from the Basement, and tonight we're going to be painting up some goblins using all the suggested materials in the description below, and only those. Trying something a little bit different. These are the miniatures you need for the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition starter set, the first encounter Goblin Arrows. So we're going to be painting those up, and I think moving forward, we're going to be trying to get everything for the 5th edition starter set up. Now, I've got to fix my camera a little bit, and then we'll get started painting. For some reason, my camera really doesn't want to stay focused on the miniatures I'm painting, but that's okay. Hopefully it's clear enough for all of you. We'll go ahead and get started. So my suggested paint set for when you first getting started is the Vallejo model color set. It's the best bang for buck when you get 16 full-size bottles of Vallejo model color paint that I think comes out to roughly $2 a bottle. And then for paintbrushes, I'm using the paintbrushes in the description below for what I'm going to be using. Grass tufts, that's what I'm going to be using. So everything I'm using tonight, I have listed in the description below. And kind of doing a learn to paint thing with this. So we're going to start off with some green. Obviously, we're painting some goblins. Let's make sure we're in focus. No, not the drawer. There we go. So this is my first time opening up a lot of these bottles, so mixing is going to take a minute with most of them. We're going to go ahead and get started. Typically, when I have bottles of paint, I have a little ball bearing inside of them to help mix them up. I'm just using some cheap synthetic brushes for all of tonight's painting because I don't think you need anything more to really get a good result. So these paints definitely need to be thinned. There we go. Most of the time when I rebottle Citadel paint, which is the most typical paint for me to use, I have a tendency to pre-thin them while I'm bottling them. This camera really doesn't want to stay in focus. Alright, so we're using a pretty light green when we're starting out. This is the flat green from Vallejo. That's what we're going to be using to start out. And we're just going to go in, make sure we're getting all the skin tones. Look at these guys. I'm painting 7 goblins tonight. Also going to be figuring out some batch painting techniques for you guys to make sure that it's nice and easy for you when you sit down to paint, because Lord knows when you sit down to paint a large number of models, it can be a really daunting task. But when you really get into it, you break it down by sections, and you get all those same sections done at the same time on all the models. It becomes a lot easier. So pretty good. These paints have excellent coverage. We're going to mix a little bit more paint. I'm using the number 3 size brush from the paintbrush pack that I have listed below for the majority of this work. Because really, the size of your brush, you don't want anything super small when you're, especially when you're first starting out, and most of the time, even when you get better, you don't want to be using the super tiny brushes because they don't provide a lot of paint in the bristles, so you'll have to go back for more paint pretty often. But also, they have a tendency to dry out while you're working. That's just a no-no. We're having a lot of issues with blurring. I'm going to try to see if I can figure out anything near at hand to maybe... I'm thinking it's this drawer right here that keeps messing with me. Let's try this old pop filter of mine, cover up that drawer. Get it to where it's not so in our way and face. Ooh. And let's see. Ah, yes. That's much better. Alright, just gonna keep on moving, trying to get all these skin tones. Remember that every so often, I'd say probably every couple minutes, you're gonna want to rinse your brush that way. Oh, looks like my webcam froze. Bear with me a moment. While I get that started back up. Hello? Seems like my camera's really deciding to give me throwing me for a loop right now. Alright, just a moment. We're gonna take a quick break while I figure out this issue. Alright, looks like we're back now. So. Alright, let's actually get my chat back up in a pop-out window so I can actually watch it. Pop-out chat, there we go. Alright, we're back. Thanks for your patience, and yeah, pre-thinning paint seems like a great way to go. I've had great luck with it, personally. Ooh, let's move my camera back. Alright, excellent. Alright, back to painting. After those interruptions. So I think, I don't even feel like I need to really go back and do a second coat. These paints have some fantastic coverage. I'm just going to clean up a couple spots. Don't have to be super careful right now, because we are going to be cleaning it up as we go. Making sure we get all the little areas of skin. From below. Alright, so that we're at a place that we can move on to the next little goblin. And like I said earlier, we're kind of focusing on getting all of the same areas and all the minis done at the same time, so that right now we're working on getting all of the skin tone done. Keep in mind that we're going to be applying a wash to this, so I'm not too worried about shading any of the areas with the paint itself, though when you get a bit better. Bear with me, the webcam is acting up again. Oh, okay, so it's flipped over. Alright. So, we're going to go with changing things on the fly here. Because my webcam decided to not work. There we go. Alright, hopefully that wasn't crazy disruptive to all of you. When I post this video as a playback, I will be editing most of that out. And I will be ordering a new webcam tonight. But anyways, the show must go on. So we're going to keep on painting all the skin tones of these goblins. For those of you watching after I post this, because I am going to edit this and post it as a recorded video, I just had some major webcam issues that had to be resolved, and I switched webcams within the first 15 minutes of my stream. Thankfully, I had my old one still hooked up, so it wasn't too bad. Make sure we're actually in focus here. For those that have hung around during all these issues, thank you. Gonna keep on painting these goblins. Seems that my camera is liking focusing on these, so. There we go. Looks like he's wearing boots, and there's just a little bit of skin down in this area right here. Because he's wearing capris. Not much skin tone on this guy. He's mostly going to be coming back and doing leathers and such on him. Make sure we're getting all the spots, and I apologize if my hand is blocking the camera a lot. I've been experimenting with other angles and positions, and this still seems to be the best one. Thankfully, since I'm painting a few of the same guy, I get to know the models a little bit, and I can do them a little bit faster as I go. Remember to rehydrate your brush every once in a while, then put more paint on it. why it's so blurry. Alright. So batch painting is always a little interesting because you can get pretty boring rather quickly. But just keep in mind that as you go, you're getting to know the models a bit. You can start thinking about what the next steps are and how you're going to paint the next area. And the further you go, the more educated decision you can make on what your next color choice is going to be. A lot of these guys I'm going to be doing some dark reds and maybe some dark blues and browns, and I'm going to be using fairly heavy wash because these are goblins, and since these are probably the first minis people watching my videos are going to be painting, they don't need to be perfect, and they can look a little dirty and bright colors. That's goblins for you. I can't tell. Oh, that is definitely a shirt. We are ready to move on to the next guy. Let's not have all these minis stacking up and fighting for focus. Okay. This guy seems to have a bit more skin to him. Let's see. There we go. The way I do goblin eyes is a bit different than I do most humanoids. Typically I'll do like a just off white, like an eggshell, and black. But for goblins I actually go more yellow and orange with black, just to give them that extra little bit of oomph factor. Come on, stay in focus. There we go. Okay. Grab our next goblin. And batch painting goes by surprisingly quickly. A lot of people don't seem to realize it's actually more difficult to do one-off models than it is to do 10 at once. So you can really fly through models because, especially in groups, models tend to make each other look good, even if your whole paint job isn't great. Add together a well done base, and you're really starting to have some great looking units on the table, or in this case, goblins. Really, and batch painting also makes paint jobs more cohesive because you're making sure that you're using the same paint mixes and colors at the same time. Most of the time when you sit down to do like a full unit or whatever, and you only finish one or two, then you come back, do another one or two, it tends to start looking a little, what's the word I'm looking for here, janky. Doesn't seem to be so cohesive because you're using slightly different shades, highlights, and that sort of thing. Though when you're using paint straight out the bottle like I am right now, that's not so much of an issue. So Oh, missed a little bit of a spot here. Tucked away. That probably would get covered up by a shade anyways. I'm going to scoot forward a bit. Alright, so we have pretty much all the skin tones done on these goblins. So we're going to move on to doing some browns, which I think in general I'm going to be doing all their pants. Right here. Some browns. The armor on their forearms, you can't see it very well, is brown, and these bows are all brown. So to take that into consideration, we're going to break that down a little bit more. I'm thinking the bow should be like a nice dark brown. That's what bows typically are when they're made out of wood. So I think because of the proximity to this piece of wood, we're going to make it a little bit lighter, and we're going to be mixing the Vallejo flat brown, the Vallejo yellow ochre, and Vallejo buff together to get the leathers and browns. Right now, I'm just going to paint the bows. And maybe some of their jerkins and stuff to get a nice dark brown, make it look like they're actually wearing some brown. Sorry if that's a little loud. Alright, again, I typically pre-thin my paints, but this time I'm going to thin them using actual water. And we're looking for something still relatively thick. A lot of people are like, oh, you want the consistency of milk. I prefer something a little more along the lines of eggnog, if you've had it. It's just a little bit thicker, or buttermilk. Buttermilk is a good example. It's a little bit thicker, but it's still a liquid. Okay. If you keep seeing me lick my brush, it's a habit I'm trying to break. Very successfully. But we're going to go in, and this is the point, because we have some hands painted here already. I'm going to pick a model up that's already dry. Because of these hands and such, we're going to want to stay a little bit more careful when we're painting the wood up close to these hands. Then get less careful as we get away from them. Again, I'm going to reiterate this tip as many times as it takes, which is never enough. I'm going to use the side of my brush more than the actual tip. Because you get your brushes to last longer that way. I'm also seeing that these bows also seem to have some metal strips on the front sides and right on either side of the handle. So we're going to keep that in the back of our minds as we move forward, so when we start doing the metal details, we can come back and hit those. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to use some of the gold and hit it with the wash, and it's going to come out looking a little bit more like bronze. Or we can do like a nice steel, as that will look quite good as well. And again, don't try to be super careful. Remember, or try to be a little careful, especially if you're new, because the more effort you put in the beginning, the more you'll get out of it later. But for me, after doing this for a while, I'm not too careful because A, I do have good brush control at this point, but also it might actually make it look more like goblins if it's a little dirty. And like I mentioned earlier, I had some of these pants and shirts and such. I'm going to actually paint with the brown to make them look like a leather. And I'm going to make it a little different on each goblin just to add a little bit of variety. So on this guy, I'm going to do some brown pants. Make sure the camera's in focus. Come on. Yep, so we're just going to paint these pants a little bit brown. And on some of the other guys, I'm going to do his boots like a dark brown. For his shirt, or his hat. Really, the choice is yours when you're painting these guys. I'll also have, when I upload this as a video, I'm also going to link where I bought the files for these goblins. They're from a guy named Titan Troll Miniatures on Patreon. And I'm a big fan of his. I'm actually a patron every month and pick up his files because they honestly look fantastic. One of my favorite things is that an ongoing project of his is taking different monstrous races or even humanoids and creating chess sets with them and releasing them as files that you can also pick up on his My Mini Factory page. And they are just a series of busts that you can use at your on your chess tables. We're moving on to the next guy here. Is the last one. It's pretty much done. Again, when you're batch painting, you want to get all of the same colors done in sequence. So I already had dark brown on my palette, so I'm going to be going through and painting all the dark browns on all of the goblins and save myself some time. That bow's already pretty much there. So now I'm going to choose, let's make his hat and his boots dark brown as well. Really add some characters to each of these guys. And we're going to come back after the wash and highlight them, though that's up to you. When you're first starting out, you might go, well, the wash makes it look good, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. But you could also go a little bit further and really make all the miniatures pop. Alright, well, his boots are looking pretty good. Now, you might be going, well, Kieran, he has like a bunch of belts here and such. Like, that might be something that we want to do for dark brown, and you'd be right. However, because they're small details, and we still have a larger detail to do around it, like the pants, we're not going to do those details yet, because I might not mess it up, but I definitely have a higher chance of messing it up if I already have or if I have to go back over with a larger paintbrush. So it's best to just do your large areas and then come back and do all those small spots, because you're going to get a better result. With that said, we're going to go ahead and take this dark brown, paint his hat. Some of the other guys, I might do some purples or reds, something fun, interesting. Might even do like a lighter green. It's a time to have a little bit fun, because goblins, again, are typically, not always, but typically a little bit more on the wild side. They kind of wear whatever's available to them. So if it looks a little dirty, a little mismatched, it honestly helps sell that these are goblins. Alright, I'm going to go on and move to painting the next little goblin archer. Now, you might have noticed that when I'm painting these, I have mostly archers on the table, and that's because I recently read a book called The Monsters Know What They're Doing. It broke down by, and it's a fantastic book, I highly suggest it. Thank you to my friend for buying it for me on my last birthday. It's been a fantastic read as a DM. Anyways, in it, he describes how the goblins on their stat blocks in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, if I can actually speak, yeah, that needs to go away. Keeps focusing on that little hole. There we go. Breaks down the goblin stat block to be like, well, hey, they've got a fantastic stealth score. They have the, like, goblin cunning, which gives them the kind of rogue actions of dodge, disengage, and stealth as a bonus action. That would make them fantastic skirmishers. You pair that with the whole idea that on their stat block they make better archers than anything else. Well, as many of us are probably well familiar with, playing with stealth archers like Skyrim. And so I'm mostly painting these archers with that in mind. Of that, when I run this encounter, also called Goblin Arrows, having a bunch of archers is in character with how goblins would actually act in that instance. Right now I'm trying to decide on this mini where I want the dark leather, and I'm deciding that on the majority of these guys I'm going to make their boots a dark brown. That just makes sense to me. So yeah, when you're running later on in the module, you run into bugbears and hobgoblins and even a dragon, spoiler alert. And I really suggest reading The Monsters Know What They're Doing, because it's such a fantastic breakdown on all of the monsters you run into in the module. And as a new DM, it could really help you with ideas on how to run the encounters and make them all feel unique. For instance, in Goblin Ambush, you're running into a bunch of archers ambushing you on a road. Well, stealth archers are going to be the perfect opportunity for that, because they'll stick in the trees around you and take pot shots from cover, and your players are going to have a much, not difficult, but is more challenging encounter. And by also running it, the goblins are typically cowards, hence their stealth score. It creates a more interesting encounter to where once the players start getting the upper hand, you can have the goblins just run away and lead them to the next part of the module, which is finding the goblin hideout. It can create a lot of drama, which that's why you play D&D. You're trying to tell a story. Alright, I'm going to say with the dark shirt and boots, I'm ready to move on to my next goblin. This guy doesn't have a bow. So for this, I'm going to take his shield. I'm going to do that a dark brown. Later on, dry brush a lighter brown. Words, they are difficult sometimes. Dry brush a lighter brown over it, because to get all of the wood grain in there. Because it is a beautiful sculpt that has a lot of detail. Careful around the stuff you've already painted. Got a little bit on his elbow there, but I'm going to be coming over with a different color, so it's not a big deal. Making sure that we get in these recesses. So nothing's worse than picking a model back up and seeing all of the spots you missed, all that light gray. Which is why most people suggest you prime with a black or something. It's easier to hide those mistakes. But I think often that makes it look a little too dark. Now I'm going to come back and fix this ear that I just put some brown on. And keep moving forward. I think I'm going to make his boots mostly dark brown. He's got some weird looking straps here, so we're going to make those a little bit different. Alright. Just gonna focus a minute while I get these little spots in here. Don't forget to get the inside of the boots like I almost just did. We're moving on. Been a professional painter for a couple of years now, and I keep forgetting stuff like that, and later have to come back and redo it. It looks like I don't have very many browns, so I'm thinking about how I'm going to do this. It looks like his, if it's in focus, his hood and this piece are part of the same like medieval style hood. So I'm thinking I might go with a darker brown on this sleeve. Or could do an interesting color like maybe even gray, mix some white and black together. Maybe even an orange. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and do his weapon shaft, dark brown as well. I've had a few people ask me, Kieran, how do you choose where you start? Like, why is it that you started with the skin tone first instead of doing these clothes? Well, it's actually kind of similar to what I was saying earlier about the small details versus the large details. And what I mean by that is you're going to go with what's excuse me, let me rephrase that. You're going to go with what's more difficult to get to first. So the skin is more recessed in general than anything else on the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the things that are the hardest to reach when I don't have to be careful when I'm laying down paint. And then paint the easier stuff later so there's less of a chance that I'll mess up and have to go back into those deep sections and fill it back in, and most likely hit all the areas that are now easier to paint. Does that make sense? Go for the harder areas first, the ones that are harder to reach, so therefore if you mess up, you're not really losing anything. But this guy is ready to be set down and work on another one of those archers. A little bit off, come back. I post this on Instagram later, which I know I said on my last stream and then never posted that photo. It's coming tomorrow, folks. And by tomorrow, I mean the day after the stream. But I will be posting a photo of these models as well. And I'll post a picture of my first miniature I ever painted, which happens to be a goblin. As a sort of, here's where I am now, this is where I came from. And an interesting fact is that the reason I'm choosing goblins and the 5th edition starter set as my point of, hey folks, let's teach you how to paint, is those are the first models I painted. I painted the goblins I needed to run Lost Mine of Phandelver, excuse me. That was my first foray into mini painting, and I thought it was the perfect place to start for everyone else as well. It gives you, it's such a fantastic little module. I'm not typically a fan of modules. I think they're a little too restrictive for my DMing style, but I will always have a sweet spot in my heart for Lost Mine of Phandelver because it is such a well-written little adventure that also gives you the opportunity to explore a little bit. In fact, some of the best parts of the entire module are the things that happen when you're exploring. And it's a wonderful example of the game theory called river theory or creek theory, and it's how every little side plot feeds back into the main river of your story, meaning your players go off on a little side creek that splits off from the river and get distracted. Well, you're going to use that little stream, that story, that little side arc as a way to further your main storyline and feed back into it and create a richer storyline because of it. It is the personal philosophy I ascribe to as a DM, that everything you should do should make the world feel richer and the stakes for the main storyline feel a little higher. And right now, we're pretty much at the last goblin for this dark brown. Now, if you're first starting out, you are not going to be as fast as me, and that's okay. I've been painting for the better half of, well, I'm just going to say, I've been painting for about 6 years now. And painting professionally for commissions and such for 3 of those years now, or just close enough to it. That my brush control allows me to go this quickly, and I am a big fan of speed painting because then I can actually put painted models on the table in the time that I have. So like that hat, for instance, for somebody who's new, they would be very careful around the face and that ear, but because I've been doing it for so long, I go, okay, well, if I just hold my brush in a certain way, there's less of a chance that I'm going to hit the ear or the face that I'm currently working on. Alright, I don't have to worry about it. I can move on. If I do mess up, I also know how to fix it rather quickly, and that is a benefit as well. So if you're still doing the greens on the first model you picked up, that's fine. When you first start out on anything, and people who are good at anything will tell you, is that in the beginning you take your time, you learn, you get the fundamentals down, you learn how to do your brush control, and you'll be fine. Eventually you'll get as fast as me. Alright. I'm thinking... Oh, I lied when I said that I was on the last goblin. I am not. I have this guy. In several moments in the Lost Mine of Phandelver module, they point out certain goblins have having specific characteristics. They have more hit points, or they have special abilities, and using these special, like, kind of cool looking minis for that is a good way at the table to represent that you are running a unique or special goblin. It's a unconscious cue to the players of, this guy's interesting, you need to think about what he can do. Now, this is a support I forgot to clean up when I primed it, and there we go. So this guy, let me go ahead and paint his boots that dark brown up until the wraps on his legs. Not being super careful because, well, he is a goblin. Even I get a smudge of dark brown on his leg and forget about it later, throwing the wash on, I just go, oh no, it's a dirt smudge. But I highly suggest that you actually take your time, especially if you're kind of new to the hobby. Because, like, for instance, right there, I don't know if you can see that. I got a little bit of brown on his leg, and I have to go back and fix that. And voila. Oh, let's also fix that right there. I'm thinking I might do like a nice blue or something like that on this part, because just to make him pop even more. Now I'm gonna go back, realize I missed a couple spots. Starting to run out of that dark brown on my palette, but that's fine. I don't have too much more to do. thinking I need a little bit more brown on my palette. I'll take a quick drink of water. Thin in the paint because it does come quite thick, which is nice, especially for a cheap paint set, is that they give such high pigmented, thick paint, is that it goes a lot further. I'm gonna have to come back and fix that hand and some of the skin tone around this shaft. It's one of those that maybe I should have done the dark brown first, but overall I still think it was more beneficial to do the skin tone first. And seriously, I love Titan Control Miniatures stuff. I've been a subscriber or patron of his for quite a while. And they're just always such high character, just fantastic detailed sculpts that are really fun to paint. Alright, that guy is pretty much everything. And by everything, I mean all the browns. So we're going to go ahead and pick another color that we want to do. And I'm going to say that I'm going to take some of this blue, some of this flat blue. Yeah, it's really nice blue. Again, we're going to come back and thin it. And I suggest when you are thinning your paint is that you use a different water than what you rinse your brush in, so that your color stays a little bit more true. By introducing different colors into your rinse water, and therefore when you dip your brush into it, when you're thinning a paint, you're going to introduce some of those colors to the miniature. That's not something you really want. If you keep seeing me reach over for a few minutes to adjust something on the side, I am adjusting the camera that is filming the mini painting. I'm also recording it independently on the camera itself so that I can use this footage in a YouTube series for painting everything you need for the 5th edition starter set, Lost Mine of Phandelver. Alright, that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and do his shoes, because this is one of the goblins I didn't do dark brown shoes for. And the colors might seem a little bright right now, but remember we're going to be throwing a shade on it, and that's going to darken it up significantly and give it that nice grim, dark feel. It's not going to seem quite so bright when we're done. Like right now it looks kind of cartoonish, but that is okay. Looks like I didn't do all of the green. So let's go ahead and... There we go. Alright. You know what? We're going to go back to that kind of leader who I'm thinking of as the goblin boss. Kind of the... When they're out in the field, this is the one who tells everybody what to do. Not because he's any good at it, he's just good at hitting. Therefore, he's good at fighting. We're going to go ahead and give him a blue wrap as we go around. Maybe paint in a patch while we're at it a little later on. Ooh, he might be the leader just because he has 2 axes. He's got more shinies, more sharps. You know what? Just because it seems fun, maybe we might give him a blue mohawk? You know what? Maybe his little eye patch is made from the same material as his wrap. Maybe it's who he got the axes from. Some poor fool that he robbed. Alright. Moving back on. Let's make this guy have some blue pants. Maybe the last troop that they robbed was a bunch of clowns. So they have brightly colored clothing. But if we really wanted to bring these things down, make them a little bit more saturated or desaturated so they don't draw so much attention or they don't seem so bright, we could add a little bit of brown to the mix, or tan, or even black. That's a tendency to desaturate things. Yeah, I'm thinking that that's good for that guy. And in fact, I don't want to do all of these guys blue. I'm thinking that doing too much blue might not be the best idea. So let's do this guy's shirt. I'm going to introduce some other colors here. Here you can kind of see the shirt tucking out or peeking out just a little lower, and it looks like he has a cloth on his bow, so maybe we'll even do like a little bit of a blue on that, make it look like a piece of cloth that he robbed, or just to mark that this is his bow. See, I have the blue pants. That's my bow because it has the blue cloth on it. Goblins are very jealous about the things that they own. This guy. Let's see. Maybe we'll just do a blue hood. Remember, we're using the flat blue from Vallejo. Using the edge of my brush to make sure that I'm not getting any lower than the thing I'm trying to paint. Alright. Here we go. Looks like I got a little bit of blue onto the shield, but that's fine. I can go back and fix it. It really feels like my camera's autofocus is just freaking out. right? Yeah. We're gonna do, I think, blue shirt for this guy. Didn't notice that the music had stopped a while ago. There we go. All right. Let's do another blue hat. It occurs to me, I forgot to get the arrows of the bow, so I'm going to go back with some of the dark brown. Just hit all the arrows for these guys. Make sure they pop. This is one of those few times that I'm actually using the tip of my brush. Even then, I'm still using mostly the edge of it. I'm still gonna hit this guy's armor because I'm realizing going back and doing just a light brown and all of those isn't gonna look quite right. Alright. Now, using just the Vallejo model color set and Null Oil is going to severely limit what paints I use. I have, I believe, over 80 paints surrounding me right now. And I keep thinking, oh, I can grab that one, or I can grab the Eshin Gray from Citadel for this part. And then I keep reminding myself, no. You're going to use the 16 colors of the starter set, and you're going to like it. Though I do think it's going to be good for me. It's going to kind of remind me about how to correctly mix paints and get the desired effects with a limited palette. I'll be thankful for all the colors I have, but also help me not be so lazy in my color choices. Make me put in a little effort. For some reason, this song reminds me of the Wii Fit. Don't ask me why. I played that game quite a bit as a teenager. In fact, my whole family did. It was like a family thing that we would all play the Wii Fit and play all the like games of like rafting and that sort of thing. Laugh at each other when they were weighed. And basically everyone, no matter how small they were, was told that they were too fat. Anyway, so we're going to move on here. Thinking it's time to introduce another color. We're going to go with a light brown. I don't want to go a little too crazy. And I think I'm going to go with this buff. color. Because I remember that I still need to base this. It's going to be probably a medium tone brown and some dark green dry brushed with some orange to make it look a bit muddy. This is a nice light color. In fact, on a humanoid miniature, I might even use it as a skin tone. Yeah, this would make an excellent skin tone with a little bit of green and red mixed into it. So what not a lot of people realize about skin is that it actually has green in it when you're mixing it up. You want a little bit of red, a little bit of green. And that's going to be what makes it really look like true color skin tone. Again, this looks pretty freaking light, but remember, we're going to be throwing a black wash over this, so a lot of it's going to be toned down, and how you bring it back up and how much paint you use to do so is completely up to you. And because I used dark brown for the pants, I am going to use this light brown for the belts. In fact, I would hesitate to even call this a brown. It's more like eggshell. Being very careful here, making sure we're keeping a sharp tip on our brush, making sure to hydrate it so we keep a nice sharp tip and that the paint doesn't get dried out, which is a very quick way to make sure you do not have a dry tip. Making sure to get a nice sharp tip on that, not that you could really see that, to get these belts. We see on his shirt here that he has a bunch of ties on it. So we're going to go ahead and pick those out with some of this light color as well. Now you could switch to a smaller brush. In fact, for these small details, I may switch to it. Though I think I'm okay. There we go. Alright. I go back with my dry brush after we wash this thing. I'm going to probably mix this light color with some of my dark brown to get a little bit higher highlight. Go back with the dry brush to really bring out some of these nice details that the gentleman over at... Actually, I don't know if he's a gentleman. I do not know. Alright. Let's see, what can we do light colored on this guy? Let's do his whole shirt this light color. You know what? Let's get a little bit of red in here. Why not? Red is actually the color that you'd want to use typically with green, because it's a complementary color, or it's a contrasting color. Now this is flat red from the Vallejo kit we've been using. It's kind of... it's a little desaturated. I'm going to look at this clear orange. Ooh. See if we can get something a little bit richer in tone. It's a very desaturated red. That gets it a little bit more vibrant, using it, mixing in a little bit of the orange. It's probably a 2/3 red to 1 part orange. And to get this color, we're going to come in. Oh, that is very desaturated. Not thrilled with that. But we're going to roll with it. Might have to do a couple coats of this to get full opacity. Don't know why I whispered that. Kind of looks like he's wearing jeans. This is the point where I realize I forgot to thin my paint because I'm so used to my pre-thinned paints. Clad in denim. You know, they're going with the Canadian suits. Don't remember where that's from. What am I quoting right now? It's How You Met Your Mother. They shall be known as Clan Denim. The clan leader is Levi. And suddenly becomes a Book of Levi. Eli? Oops. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to come back in with a second coat. You know, now that you've said that, Bodiggle, it really is that they're wearing jeans. And now I cannot unsee it. Well, jeans did become a fashion option in the 1800s because of how durable it was for miners. And since the adventure is called Lost Mine of Phandelver, maybe in this world the locals all made jean material or denim to really have some durable clothing. Mixing up some more of this red color. Make sure we're drawing in, thinning it down correctly. Free world building from Bodiggle. Should really charge for that, man. Oh, wow, that was a hard spot to get to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that boot. So brightly colored. Oh, now this guy's wearing a prison jumpsuit. They keep being told orange is the new black. Alright, I'm going to call that guy pretty good. Alright. I'm going to keep going back and forth with this orange here. Let's mix a little bit with this cream color. Okay. Odd looking desaturated brown. See how I like that. Actually, I like that quite a bit. Sure, we have good coverage. Let's go ahead and paint his hat this lighter color. Now is a good time to remind everybody that there's a point in your miniature painting that you're going to look at the miniature and you go, wow, that sucks. I'm just about at that point. Really start to feel like, what am I doing? This doesn't look good. But trust the process. Keep moving forward, keep pushing through. Using a little bit of a lighter brown here by mixing the cream color and the dark brown together. Creates this rich, kind of chocolate brown look to it. Missed an ear there. I'm gonna go ahead and add some of this orange red. This guy's pants. So not only are these goblins stealing from miners, they're also stealing from prison inmates. All right. You know what? I do. What am I gonna do next? What part of these guys am I gonna do? In make some of this. I'm thinking about what the next color is gonna be. I'm gonna go ahead and take some of this silver. Hello. Model color. Go ahead and start filling in some of these metallics. Ooh, that is very bright. Let's mix in just a little bit of this gold. Bring it down just a bit. Make it maybe a little bit more of a bronze. Mix that up. Yeah, that looks a bit more... I'd almost call that a mithril. That's very bright. Alright, if you're going to pick up any other paints besides this starter set, my suggestions are picking up a bottle of Leadbelcher and Rinfang Silver from Citadel, because holy crap are these metallics super bright. Like, that's very bright. That's actually adding gold to the silver to try to bring it down. That's okay. We'll keep moving forward. The wash will bring it up, or bring it down. Hopefully as much as I want it to. Because holy crap, this is so bright. I just not like being thinned. I'm gonna have to go back over this. This does not want to behave. I gotta thin it even more. I'm actually gonna switch to a smaller brush. This is a lot. I'm going to update my suggested paint set. This metallic color kind of sucks. I'm going to suggest some Nuln Oil down below. And also some Leadbelcher, because holy crud. Yeah, I'm not super thrilled with this metallic there, Bodiggle. Though not very many paint sets come with metallics at all, so I am thankful for that. And if you are in a pinch, this will work, but I am seriously considering breaking my rule, just reaching over and grabbing a pot of Leadbelcher right now, because this is not going on smoothly, nor does it really look that nice. Ugh. I'm going to persevere, but... Oh, wow. It's not terrible. It's not the worst metallic I've used. Decided he needs a cod piece that's metallic. I mean, it is bright. So if you really wanted like a bright metallic, this is the stuff. Stop focusing on that guy. I'd used quite a bit of Vallejo paint before, and I was a big fan of the paint. I've never used any of their metallics, which I've heard that their true color metallics are fantastic, but I gotta say, for the stuff that comes in this kit, the silver and gold, not a fan. I'm not a fan. Terrible coverage. Really bright. They do not thin well. So if you're picking up this set, my suggestion, which is frankly better than the majority of kits out there. In fact, I've looked at quite a few before I made my suggestion. This one is by far the best. But do yourself a favor, pick up some lead belcher. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say that that's the suggestion from here on out. Is alright, pick up this paint set, pick up the Vallejo, or the Citadel Nuln Oil, and pick up lead belcher. Adding that to the description below. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and break. That lasted not even an entire stream. Gonna do myself a favor. I'm gonna grab some lead belcher, throw it on my palette. And I'm gonna show you on the axe guy, the boss man, denim skirt boy, just how big of a difference these two paints are. Alright, so right, there's that. Oh, decide not to focus when it's right here. Alright, let's go ahead and it's just such easy coverage. Boom. Just covered. So we've got this versus this. Doesn't look like a huge difference on the camera right now, but I can assure you that it makes a crazy difference. In fact, let's do it this way. instantly looks so much more realistic. In all honesty, now that the silver is dried, it's not that bad. But putting it on, I'll be honest, if I was a brand new mini painter and that was my experience working with metallics, it would ruin my experience. Because that was a pain. Go ahead and just make his axes consistent. I'm going to go back to using the stuff from the Learn to Paint kit. Continue on my merry way. I'll say this, metallics are hard. It's good to find good metallics. Once you do, you hold on to them for dear life because, good lord, is it hard. It's actually why a lot of people use the non-metallic metal method, which is using similar toned colors and using a high contrast painting method to create a metallic look to your paint job, even if there's no metallic paint involved, which is why it's called non-metallic metal. So there's none of this paint that has metal flakes in it. Alright, we're just going to keep moving forward here. And I'm probably not even get to the point of washing tonight, because I am painting 7 models. And my usual 2.5 hour rule doesn't apply when I'm painting this many models, but still, it takes up a fair amount of time. Especially when I start getting into these smaller details. I have to overload my brush just so it goes on. Ooh, shakes. For those of you wondering, from this little blue, this is a 3D printed painting handle that I found online and printed on my FDM printer. And it works exactly like the official Citadel paint holder, or miniature holder. In fact, you can probably hold larger miniatures in this one. And it's like 25 cents in plastic plus a rubber band. If you haven't thought about picking up a 3D printer beforehand, I'm kind of hoping that my whole series on all these 3D printable miniatures and even some terrain pieces that you might want convinces more people to get in the hobby, because truly it is the future of tabletop. You know, even a lot of these mini painting YouTube channels are like, I want the physical models, I don't want to have to 3D print everything. It's like, well, that's great and all, but I, for one, don't like spending that much money on models. And there's also you can find and print exactly the model you need instead of going to a bunch of different stores and hoping that you find the model you need for the adventure you want to run. There's a good chance online that somebody already has it readily available and for cheaper than what you can find in stores. Alright. Let's go back over, do a little bit of a second coat on this guy just for full opacity. The fun thing about batch painting is that you keep running into spots that you missed. That was sarcastic. I know, it's because I'm trying to work quickly. I keep missing these spots. So I'm trying to get these done in a timely fashion. Clean up these metallics here. Going back in with the brown, cleaning it up a little bit, making sure that there's no metallic paint where we don't want it. Though it's not the end of the world. Wood often has a kind of flecks in it. They're almost gold. And often when I'm painting a prop that involves wood, like a Destiny hand cannon that has a wood grip, I actually dry brush gold into it before I finish doing all of my dry brushed highlights of brown to really have a deeper, more complex color palette and have those flecks of metallic tone in them, so that it sells that it's an actual wood. Something that I find that in wood looking PLAs for 3D printing, they lack that gold flaking in them to really sell that it's a wood product, like oak or anything like that. Now that we've done the blue on this guy, I can actually go back with the dark brown for his sash. Keeps focusing on my hand instead of the mini. Even on larger miniatures, or if I'm using like mostly larger miniatures, I'll add a dry brushing of gold to the wood to really help sell it. And if you notice, if anything's marketed as like oak brown, they might have some flecks of gold metallic in them, because a lot of people know that in order to sell something as wood, you need to have that sheen to it. Looks like I missed a metallic over here, so we're going to pick up some of that Vallejo metallics and go back over it. And these are going to be the most well-kept goblin weapons ever, based off of how clean and bright they are. The Clan Denim has really strict rules on the upkeep of your tools. Go back for some of this brown. We're gonna fill in these belts here. If you get a little bit of paint on either side of the belt, that's fine. The wash will most likely cover it up for you, so you don't have to worry about it too bad. Too much, too bad, so sad. Wait, what? Alright, we're gonna go ahead and pick out these little stitches here. That guy's almost ready for a wash. But before we get to a wash on that guy, we need to actually paint all the bases. And finish up all these guys. Making sure everything's, all the paint's where it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and make this a piece of armor. It looks like one. I might go ahead and wash these guys, just because I do need to do their eyes. Which, now that I'm seeing how small the eyes are sculpted, I'm probably just going to take a little bit of yellow and fill in the eye, and then throw a wash on them. This guy, we're going to go ahead and take some of this cream, mix it with a little bit of the brown to get more of that, what would I call this? Just a pretty light brown, and fill in some of these cuffs. Okay. So at this point, can't really tell you what all these little things could be. I'm kind of just going back and thinking, okay, this guy, he had the brown shirt with the orange pants. Let's go ahead and do a light-toned leather for his belts. And so I'll get that done. I'll add that in. And then go, okay, so I also need to fix his boots. So I'm going to come back, fix his boots. This is kind of cleanup time before we do the wash. Because after that, it's going to be highlights. And you can't really fix any mistakes you've made after the wash. Just does not look correct. So, for instance, that orange right there, I need to fix a little bit of it. Doop. Yep, I knew there was a brown that I missed. Boop. Alright, so he's got his belts done. This guy's got his belts done. What about this guy? Nope. Alright, we're going to add a little bit more dark brown to my palette, or the flat brown, as it's called in this scheme. Remembering to thin the paint to an eggnog-like consistency. Well, people might be like, what the fuck are you talking about, Kieran? How about buttermilk? To a heavy cream consistency. I happen to be one of those people that loves eggnog. Oh, I do have some in my fridge. Could pour myself some. Alright. So his belt is done. I see that there's a little bit on his face that I can clean up. I'm going to go ahead and do that. The longest part of any paint job is this cleanup. And you want to start being careful when you're adding other colors, because you don't want to spend so much time doing this. Alrighty. His belts are done. His belts are done. It looks like I'm ready to do their eyes. I'm tempted to go white and then do a very thin lemon yellow over it. Yeah. We're going to grab the white. Oh, there we go. And I'm just going to take a thin paintbrush. Oh, the white is already pretty thinned down. That's a pleasant surprise. White is notoriously chunky. And I'm just going to dab into their eye sockets. You can see on my brush right now. Actually, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little drop of water. You want to avoid that. You know what? it looks like he's squinting his right eye as he takes left eye takes aim. So I'm gonna respect that and not fill it in. Those poor bastards only got one eye, so we only have one eye to fill in there. Eyes are notoriously difficult, so don't feel bad if you fuck it up, like I just did. I tell you that because I don't want to feel bad about it. Now, so the reason why I'm doing, even though I want these to be yellow eyes, but I'm starting with white, is because yellow is a notoriously difficult color to have reach full opacity, so it actually looks yellow. So the way that you fight this is that you add white first and then do yellow over it, so it doesn't have to have such a dark color to go over in the first place. Fix the eye a little bit. Okay. Eyes take a fair amount of time to master. These models do have pretty small eyes. It's actually one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of like the official Dungeons & Dragons miniatures line, Nolzers. I'm not a big fan of it because they are realistic proportions instead of heroic proportions, which in my mind the difference between those two is heroic proportions are the face is larger, the eyes are larger. It's more about the sense of what it is than what it clearly looks like. And the reason why that's an important distinction is because realistic eyes are tiny on miniatures, and painting them is nearly impossible to make them look good. So that's my 2 cents. Your mileage may vary on that sort of thing, but there we go. For instance, I'm not super stoked with the size of these eyes, but that's fine. I can also cheat it a little bit and make them look larger without actually messing up the sculpt. So I keep going mini by mini. A little bit of white here. This guy has both eyes open, and they're actually pretty visible, so I'm going to do the actual way I do this. I'm going to put a little bit of black on my palette. The way I usually do this, I should specify. Oh, none wants to come out. Odd. Alright, let me grab a little pokey tool. There we are. Gotta poke in. Clear that jam. There we go. Getting a little bit of black on the palette. Ooh, that was a lot. Anywho. Alright, we're gonna grab some black. The way I do eyes is I grab a bit of this black, thin it down correctly, and then I kind of smear it in. I am not super careful. I am careful, but I'm not like, oh no. And I actually oversize it a bit. Alright. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go back to white. As soon as that's dry, you're going to go back to white. So I'm going to set it down, and then I'll continue that explanation once I get... Actually, I'm just going to blow on it. Not to confuse with blow it. See if the paint's dry. It is not. So I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to start doing the yellow and give that some time to dry before we continue on. This is a very, very bright yellow, so that works perfectly for me. Fairly thick, that's fine. I come back, right over the white we just did, we're going to just put that yellow. If this was a goblin player character, I'd probably be putting more effort into make sure the eyes look realistic and like there's a pupil and everything. But for the size of the eyes on these models and the fact that these are just meant to be enemies, I'm not going to spend that much effort on it. I'm going to just throw some yellow in there, come back, clean it up, then throw the wash. If I feel like it needs to be brightened back up, that's when I'd get careful. A really small brush and add just a little bit of a highlight over it. As it is, because yellow is such a hard color to get full opacity, it also helps us get like a bright spot in the eye. So those are all filled in. Let's see if that black is actually good to go now. Just shoving a paintbrush in there. Not quite there, so we're going to go back to these eyes, take a little bit of the body color or the skin, typical skin tone. We're just going to clean it up. Make sure the eye has a good shape to it. Make sure it's not too long. You don't look so freaking Egyptian. There we go. Just making sure we're shaping the eye. Think of it in a way of when you're applying makeup. That when you're doing eyeshadow and stuff, you're actually trying to reshape the eye a little bit using color. So right there, we've got like a nice squint down the arrow. Gave a little bit of an accidental pupil there, but it totally works, so I'm going to leave it. You know what? Screw it. I might do that on all of them. Alright. There we go. That honestly makes it look great, so we're going to do that to all of them. What's interesting is I'm just using the skin tone green. It's leaving a fantastic pupil effect. Well, there you go, folks. It's super easy to make goblins. Not even using black for the pupils. Alright. But we're going to go back to the eyes on this guy to show you how I typically do eyes. I'm now going to grab some of this white. And you know what? It looks like he's preparing to move that direction. So we're going to fill in white on the opposite side of the eye. Again, don't worry about being super careful about it. Right now, we're kind of blocking it in. So right there, kind of look. So we've got white on this side of the eye and black on this side of the eye. So we're going to go in with a little bit of black. Going to make sure it still looks kind of round here, like a pupil, right? Here, same thing. And now, we're going to take that body color, the skin tone, we're going to fill the eye back in. Making sure to shape the eye. As we do so, I've painted over a little bit too much of the white on that side and too much of the black on this side, but that's all part of the process. So we're going to go back, Give a little bit of this black. Okay, dab it in. Just a little bit. So in the end, we wanted to make it look like he's looking that direction, which I think we accomplished pretty well. Now, because all the other eyes are yellow, and this guy's got white, I'm actually going to thin down the yellow considerably. Where we want... Now we want like a milk consistency. We're going to do what's called a glaze. Where we've got super thin paint, where basically it's a wash. That's kind of what we're looking for. And then we're just going to go over it ever so slightly to tint it yellow. There we go. That's tinted yellow. Now it looks like it's just the yellow of all the other eyes. In all honesty, these guys are ready to have a wash thrown on them. I say that and immediately notice a couple details on a few of them that need to be addressed. So, I'm going to say we'll go ahead and wash them. Now, we're going to go ahead and throw down stuff onto the base. We're going to make that a point. Now, that's a nice, dark, desaturated green. It is the refractive green in the kit. We're going to take some of the yellow ochre as well. Yeah, that's perfect. So we're going to take the yellow ochre. We're going to grab a... Nope, that's way too big. Let's look at all my brushes. There we go. We're going to use the number 2 size brush here. Thin down the yellow ochre. Then we're going to go in. We're going to paint the rocks. And just all the big rocks on here. Larger rocks. All right. Okay, and it looks kind of bright right now, but once we throw the raw wash on it, it won't look quite so bright. Oh, totally hit his boot right then, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. Noticing that the yellow looks far more mustard on the screen than it does in my hand. Okay, that was far too thick. His denim shoes. Alright. Alright. Maybe you can't, like, Kieran, can't I just have black bases? Yeah. Yeah, you can. It'd save you a fair amount of time. But there's something about a thought out base that has character to it that really just brings it together. Anybody who just has black bases, I always just go, oh, if only you had a painted base, because you would bring your, like, 6 out of 10 miniature to a straight up 8. Because presentation matters. I don't care what anybody says. Okay. All right. The way I do bases is I actually bought some aquarium sand, or terrarium sand, from the dollar store, and that's what I used. I bought 2 different sizes, as you can see. There's a fine and coarse variant, and then there's also a like broken glass style, which is this like large slate-like pieces you see here. Like, for instance, this is one of the broken glass pieces. That's one of the broken glass pieces. But these larger, but still on the smaller side than the glass pieces variants, are just the coarser terrarium sand. But you can always just go outside and grab dirt. A lot of people suggest baking it to get any moisture out. Don't know how much of a difference that truly makes, since you're going to be adding wet paint to it anyways. But I would suggest that if you're using anything from outside, you use a watered down PVA glue, like Elmer's white glue. That is a PVA glue. You water it down with water or even isopropyl alcohol, and seal the entire base with it before you start painting. Alright, that's all the yellow on these bases done. Now we're going to go to this green. We're going to water it down significantly. In fact, I'm going to switch to a much larger brush for this. In the interest of time. Really make sure to get it pretty watered down. So now we're going to hit all this gravel on it. We're going to instead make it look like a little bit more like a mossy, kind of overgrown look to it. Getting all those nooks and crannies. This is where having it heavily watered down helps significantly, because if I had a fairly less wet, less watered down paint, it would take significantly longer to get in. But I'm going to switch to a slightly smaller brush. Just that one didn't give me enough control that I wanted. I'm going to go back, make sure we're hitting all these spots. And if you hit something you don't want to, or you're like, oh, I just went over that rock I just painted, it's the base. You're going to do a heavy wash on the base anyways, so it's not a big deal. Especially when you come back and dry brush everything, it's really going to... it's not going to draw attention to itself, really. Especially since when we go back and do highlights, we're going to be making sure that all the emphasis is on the face, and where we want the emphasis to be, not on the base. We're not even going to do any highlights on the base, really, except maybe one dry brush of a relatively dark tone. But just like that, we have the kind of mossy bases. We already got two ready to go. So we're just going to keep doing that. And like right now, this paint isn't really dry. Well, that doesn't really matter. We just keep on moving on. The base could use a little bit of variance. It's fine. I've had a few people tell me that now that I'm a little blasé when I talk about miniature painting, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think I've been painting long enough to realize what I actually need to put effort into. And not worry about being so perfect the entire paint job. I think that's something that a lot of new painters get, this analysis paralysis of having a perfect paint job, while I'm sitting here going, look, the wash and the highlights, those are when it really comes together. Yes, you need to make sure that you're painting within the lines while you're painting, but really, you want to just make it cohesive. You're going for a feel, not historical accuracy. This hobby, it's an element of your storytelling. And if you're so stressed out about it being perfect, well, that's a really easy way to not have a good time. Now, obviously, me doing commission work, I'm getting paid to do it. And the people paying me, they expect a certain level of product. And that's fine. I have been doing this long enough where I know what I need to spend time on and what I don't need to worry about before I even go into a project. And you as a new painter, that's if you're a new painter. If you're an experienced painter and just hearing me ramble on about this, well, ignore it. But if you're a new painter and you keep hearing me go like, oh, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, there's probably a reason. And that's where you intentionally use your highlights, you intentionally use your wash to bring attention to certain areas of the model. And that makes it to where on other parts of the model, you don't have to make it perfect. And oftentimes, people who spend time on making every aspect of their miniature perfect, the majority of those details aren't going to be seen after you add any of the basing, you add the wash. It wouldn't have been visible anyways. That's honestly one of the reasons why I prefer painting miniatures that have been glued to bases already. Because I have a limited field of view on all of it. Like, oh, cool. You're never going to see that part. You're never going to be able to see that part. You're never going to be able to see that. It limits the fields of view, and so you don't have to make everything on the model perfect. And I'm going to say this as well. I'm painting this with the idea of teaching other people how to paint, that this is going to be used in videos and that sort of thing. Just realized I forgot to do this guy's belts. That's fine. I can do that now. That you're not going to have perfect first miniatures. That's impossible. Even people you see like, oh, my first miniature, it took me 7 hours, and it's this fucking immaculate paint job. It's, well, first of all, bullshit. Second of all, how many times did they repaint it? It could be that that was the first miniature they painted, but how many times did they repaint it? I've known a few people who have admitted to being like, yeah, that was my first miniature, but I repainted it like 6 times. I'm like, no, so that's your 6th miniature paint job. That's not your first. It's just the first miniature you've touched. That's an important distinction in my mind. Maybe not so much in others, but each their own. Alright. Got the belt buckle on him. Gotta fix those pants. They got a little bit of mud on them. Oh, that guy's wearing blue pants. We're gonna go back to the green. Really load up the brush so it just comes right off. You might notice I'm really pressing these bristles down, and it actually gives me more control so they don't like go up onto the leg and that sort of thing. Also helps push it down into the pebbles here. I'm also not too worried about getting paint on the sides because I'm going to go back with a black paint and clean up all these edges because, again, it helps sell a cleaner, more cohesive, that's the word I was looking for earlier, cohesive paint job. I'm going to use a little bit of a sharper brush here, try to get in this little spot here. When I based them, I wasn't super aware of where I need to get my brush, but that's fine. Alright. Alright. So all these guys now have painted bases. Now I have this mohawk. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to mix a little bit of my white, a little bit of my black, and make just a dark gray. I don't want it, I want it to read as black, but pure black on things has a tendency to disappear. You don't see the details. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to do just a gray over that, clean up the hairband, pretty sure Vallejo adds bittering compound to their paint. This is the worst tasting paint ever. Alright. Well, with that, that's all of them ready to go. That was a last minute change of heart. I'm going to go ahead and take some of this black paint. Dab it into the eye. Set that skin tone. Ooh, I'm not even in frame. Almost like I'm not supposed to drink it. That is correct. Almost. I will say that I think the worst thing I ever did as a miniature painter was start doing that. Start licking my brush to shape it instead of just using a damp paper towel. It is such a hard habit to break now. And I'll continue to say how bad it is in the hopes that nobody else does what I do. Alright, just going through while I'm waiting for the base material to dry. Putting a little bit of black into the pupils, so they actually read as dark instead of just skin tone. I think he's my last one. Thanks for hanging out, Bo Diggle. Nope, that is not dry. All right. That's almost ready to throw a wash on there. Just waiting for... Just waiting for this yellow to dry so I can throw a little dot of black in there. Oop. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a split tip. Yeah, it is pretty chill. Had a nice dinner out with my wife. Then came back, streamed for you. Got some sushi. Ooh, Hood Assassin. That's a good one. It's one of my favorites, though quite dangerous. What is it, like 10%? It's a 10% old ale. Alright, as soon as this green is dry, we're going to throw a wash on here. Alright. Gonna start throwing a wash on some of these guys. Ooh. I'm gonna use Citadel Knoll Oil. Just realized I was shaking the camera doing that. Alright, let's set this in a relatively secure place. I don't want to repeat of my first stream. We're just going to cover this entire miniature with this wash. Just absolutely everything. Going a little bit heavier the lower down on the model we go. Making sure when we get into the eye and such, we don't actually keep too much in there because we want to preserve some of the work we had put into it. So you can see a lot of the little imperfections and such just disappear. Kind of thinking I want a bigger brush for this. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this chip brush I was using earlier for the basing. I'm just gonna go ahead and use that to really throw down some shade. Not to be confused with throwing shade. Oh yeah, when they had the 32-ounce old ale, I'd only drink that with friends because it was just way too much. Oh, it looks like I got a little bit of blue on that brown shield, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some brown. Just real quick, cover that up. God damn it. Lick the goddamn brush again. Yeah, sushi is always good. Unless it's from a gas station, then it's never good. Alright. Making sure I get good coverage over the entire miniature. Now, once you have the wash thrown onto an area of the miniature and it's starting to dry, you do not want to go back over that area because the wash, as it's starting to dry, will get streaky if you go back over it again. That's not a good thing. Alright. Let's throw it over these rocks. Alright. I'll have to pick up some Hooded Assassin in 4-packs the next time I'm at Mage. That sounds delicious. There we go. Just making sure we're getting all the little crevices with the washes. Not too much in the eye because we still want to preserve all that work we did. We're almost through washing all these guys. All right. So as you can see, it's such a fantastic way to just quickly get all that depth and shadow with such a little effort from the model. And when we go back over it, oh, I'm actually gonna get such a great looking start to the model. When we go back over it with the same colors we used before, we're going to get some fantastic highlights. We're going to focus them around the face area to make sure that that's where the attention is drawn, not so much around the base and the legs and that sort of thing. But with that, because this is going to take roughly 40 minutes to dry, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Right around 10:10, which is close enough to the time I wanted to end by. But thanks for coming out. And this is Kieran from Tales from the Basement. Hope you had a good time. See you guys.